Hello guys, how are you? I hope you are doing great. Friends, today we are going to discuss conceptually an important topic of language teaching methodologies, teaching language through poetry. But before that, if you are here a new guest of my channel, then please do subscribe the channel for more videos. Friends, as we know that poetry has been and is one of the most important sources in language teaching. And in today's video, we are going to discuss some of the most important ways or contributions which poetry makes in language teaching. So let's discuss them one by one. So the first one is to build vocabulary. Friends, we know that poetry helps in building vocabulary or introducing new vocabulary to the language. When someone reads a poem, he may come across unfamiliar words about which he don't know, but once he deep dive to find their meaning, he can not only get their meaning but also become aware of their right using. And in that way, when he picks them thoroughly while reading or listening a poem, he can play with them by making various rhythms and rhymes. इस तरह करते हुए पोएट्री कंट्रीब्यूट करती है लैंग्वेज टीचिंग में. अब अगर हम दूसरे वे पर आ जाए या दूसरे कंट्रीब्यूशन पर पोएट्री की, तो वो है सेल्फ कॉन्फिडेंस. As we know that poetry is a tool for the expression of thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas and words, and for portraying them, for propagating them, a reader can adopt various poetic expressions through which he can express his own feelings, his own words to the general audiences, to the general readers, and in that way he builds self-confidence in himself. So it becomes obvious that poetry helps in building self-confidence of a reader, which is an essential thing for expressing target language. If you move to the third contribution or way which poetry makes in language teaching, and that is, it encourages thoughts. As we know that poetry can develop different kinds of thoughts in the mind of a reader or in the mind of a language learner, and that can be thrilling thoughts, sensational thoughts, romantic thoughts, and once these thoughts mingles with the learner voice, it gives them a new shape. और इसी तरह जब आपके दिमाग के प्याले के अंदर इन different thoughts का एक समंदर होगा, तो लैंग्वेज लर्नर को इसे अपनी सेल्फ एक्सप्रेशन देने में हेल्पफुल होगा. अब अगर हम तीसरे पॉइंट की तरफ आ जाए, तो पोएट्री कंट्रीब्यूट्स इन बिल्डिंग ग्रामर स्किल्स. Or through poetry, we can learn language when we know about different grammar skills. As we know that we come across umpteen unfamiliar vocabularies while reading a poems or other poetic piece of work. And then unusual sentences with which we don't encounter in daily activities or in daily life. And then various structures of sentences of different poems of different genres in poetry. And a language learner can get an extra knowledge about grammar by looking at these vocabularies, these unusual sentences of the poetry, and then their structure, and by this way he becomes acquainted with the different patterns and structures of the grammar. Means के poetry के through आप अपने grammar skills को better बना सकते हो, आप मुख्तलिफ types की grammar patterns और structures के बारे में जान सकते हो. The next point is it brings fluency, or by implying poetic skills we can bring fluency in a language. So reading a poem in poetic manner aloud can work well as pronunciation and fluency is concerned, because when you read the poem over and over, it makes your fluency better, and then this fluency will express your language more thoroughly and in better way. Usually a classroom practice plays significant role in building this skill. यानी कि लैंग्वेज की एक्सप्रेशन के लिए फ्लुएंसी की नीड होती है, और पोएट्री बहुत ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट करती है एक लैंग्वेज में और एक लर्नर के लिए कि उसके ज़बान में उसकी टारगेट लैंग्वेज की सीखने में फ्लुएंसी आ जाए. अब अगर हम पोएट्री की फोनेटिक अवेयरनेस की कंट्रीब्यूशन की तरफ चले जाए, then we know that while reading a poem, elegy or other piece of poetry, we come across umpteen words which demands correct pronunciation, and by looking deeply into these words and at their meanings, we can get about them the knowledge of pitch of sound, that in what way we can express these words. We can express them loud or we can express them with a low pitch, and then their volume, and should we stress upon certain words or not, and then about inflection. So in a way poetry contributes in phonetic awareness, यानी कि आप पोएट्री के थ्रू वर्ड्स के साउंड के बारे में जान सकते हो, उनके इन्फ्लेक्शन के बारे में जान सकते हो, उनके वॉल्यूम और उनके पिच ऑफ साउंड के बारे में जान सकते हो. और इसी तरह पोएट्री एक लैंग्वेज टीचिंग में बहुत ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट करती है, और रीडर इन चीज़ों को पिक करके उस लैंग्वेज को सीख सकता है. Now if you come to the next point, and it is to improve memory. We know that poetry helps in improving memory. Poem with rhymes and rhythms becomes musical and it echoes back into your memory when you come across its verses at some other time in future. And by doing this, it enacts a great effect on the mind of a reader or a language learner. We know that if you place keys somewhere in your room or in your home, then after passing some time, when you try to find that place or the keys, you become unable to bring that place or that thought into your memory. But once you come across the rhymes or the rhythms of a song or a poem, then you immediately know, you become aware that these verses had crossed my mind at some time in the past. So in that way, poetry contributes a lot in building the memory or improving the memory of a language learner. Teaching language through poetry. यहाँ पर उनका थोड़ा सा ओवरव्यू देख सकते हो एंड देन बिल्डिंग वोकेबलरी थ्रू पोएट्री के पॉइंट को आप देख सकते हो यहाँ पर। द नेक्स्ट वन इम्प्रूव सेल्फ कॉन्फिडेंस को आप यहाँ पर देख सकते हो। वीडियो को पास करके आप अच्छी तरह नोट बना सकते हो यहाँ से एंड देन इनकरेज डिफरेंट थॉट्स पॉइंट को यहाँ पर आप देख सकते हो। एस्टेब्लिश फोनेटिक अवेयरनेस को देख सकते हो आप एंड इम्प्रूव मेमोरी, इसको आप अच्छी तरह देख सकते हो, इसे आप नोट्स बना सकते हो यहाँ से एंड देन यू कैन सी द पॉइंट ऑफ ब्रिंग फ्लुएंसी एंड आल्सो बिल्ड्स ग्रामर स्किल्स एंड advantages and conclusion. So you can see all these questions from which you can prepare a good question for paper. You can pause the video or you can zoom the writing so that you could write it very well. So that was all about teaching language through poetry. I hope you guys have understood very well.